all in the same through a dictionary interpretation. A person primarily interested in political office for selfish or other narrow, usually short-sighted reasons. That's a Merriam-Webster Collegiate Dictionary, 1998. So I thought, well, maybe that was a little outdated. So I went online and I got a few other definitions. A seeker or holder of public office who is more concerned about winning favor or retaining power than maintaining principles. Not getting much better, is it? A person who seeks to gain power or advancement within an organization in ways that are generally disapproved. Those are the definitions that are in the dictionary on about a politician. So I think that's a pretty sad commentary of the people that we elect to look after our purse strings, to look after the services we deliver throughout this province, to ensure we get better health care, to ensure we get better roads, we get better aging care, we get better education. No wonder we're losing if that is the area and that is a qualification to being a politician. I went into a school, I've been in many schools, but one particular time, and the students were saying, well, here you are, you're elected, you're a member. I was Minister of Finance at the time, and I asked them the question, what requirements do you think I need to be a politician? And they said, well, honesty, integrity, you need to have common sense. I said, so how's that working for us? The grade 11 students didn't think that was working for us. So we have got the reputation we deserve. So how do we change that? We change that by changing politics and recognizing it as a root cause of the problems we face in this province. And I've seen it firsthand, and I know it's possible. And why do I look at it differently? Because of the experience I've had working outside of government for over 30 years. Experience where I had to deliver on a service better and better every day. It was a case of state employed or not state employed. In government, it's optional. How do you get elected? Usually the incumbent bums are being thrown out. So you get in by someone else's default. And so, that's not by your own merit necessarily. Maybe you stay elected by your own merit, and that's great. But we recycle New Brunswick. You've heard me say it over and over again. Recycle New Brunswick is not an environmental term. It's something we do each and every election. So how do we change that? The Premier's office shouldn't be a training center. It shouldn't be a playground. It shouldn't be a learning center or a daycare. But that's what it's become. And it's through no fault of any particular individual. Everyone goes in with the right ideas. But how many of you would entrust your $8.5 billion business with someone that never had a job in their life? Who would do that in their right mind? But yet we do it in the hope that it's going to get better. We do it thinking that, this time it'll be different. There's no reason for it to be different. But there is this time. So my article that I recently had written about province first, politics second. Well, you can imagine in some of my caucus meetings there's a bit of chill in the air because, what do you mean? But we all know. So when are we going to say it? And how do we move the next step in order to fix it? So for me, it's like, how do we restore people's faith in this province? It starts with the leadership in this province. It starts with people doing what they say, committing to what they believe in, and presenting the facts and the real information that allow people to believe it as well. And that was the whole way I governed my whole life. You do what's right, you do what you can support in doing, and you stand firm because this is the right thing to do. And people who may or may not like it will understand why, and they'll know it's the right thing to do as well. My family lived the New Brunswick dream. We grew up in this province. I was educated in the universities in this province. My family all knew their grandparents. And you think, wow, I want to have my grandchildren and your grandchildren and your children do the same thing. Now my kids, my 4 daughters, are out of the province now. 1 in Bangkok, 2 in Ontario, and 1 in Halifax. We always thought we were good parents and that they would be home. But nevertheless, we stay in contact and we keep connected. But will I ever see them back in New Brunswick? I'm hopeful. But what can we do in the meantime to make this province a better place for us to be? When I left Irving Oil, I remember we had a little party for me, and I remember during the party, one guy got up and gave a little speech, and he said, do you realize you worked your entire career here at Irving Oil, and the Maple Leafs had never won the cup in all that time? Well, I never really thought of it that way, but you're right. And the Blue Jays are heading in the same track. But I guess the point was, when I left there after 33 years, I left there thinking, I hired my successor 3 years before I left. The individual went through all the different divisions, departments that I was responsible for, and he walked right into my office when I walked out. Now, in some ways, that's a bit concerning, right? You're replaced just like that and gone. But in other ways, it's satisfying because you know you didn't leave a job partly done, and you knew that it was in good hands and you carried on. Well, you don't do that in government. You walk into your job and you walk in and there's nothing there. It's empty. When I left finance, after the 4 years, they had a little party for me, the finance group, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house, including my own. I never walked away from anything and felt so bad in my life as thinking this job's not done. We just started. But I can't get it done in finance. We were too long getting traction, and it's too difficult to get things done because politics rules the roost. So I'm not there to represent and be another politician. And I say this in the sense of that definition. If you're looking for someone with that definition, then I suggest you vote for someone else. Because that is not going to get our province back on track. It's going to take individuals from all parties to say this time it's province first, because one party is no better than the other. And when I talk about that, when I wrote that in my article, it's real. We all know it. So we can jump up and down and we can defend one color or another, but the platform that's going to fix this province is a platform that is set up to drive a program that is acceptable to all parties. And yes, that may sound like a noble cause, but it's a cause that will change the face of this province. And I believe there's a lot more people who want to fix this province than want to continue on the path they're on. And that's certainly my goal. Accountability was a way of life. It wasn't optional. It was something that I did every day. I wanted to be measured on performance, and I found people in government that wanted to be measured on performance. They knew we could be better, and they knew that they could be better. And what's the common denominator? Every one of us had the same goal. We wanted better health care, better education, better social services, better aging care model. We wanted all of the same things. So why couldn't we get better? One common denominator. It was the political side that caused good decisions to go to bad decisions and not effective decisions. Measuring performance shows good results that you can move from one term to another, one government to another, and you pick up where others left off and you keep moving forward. There isn't any sense of urgency in government as a rule. It's only one election to the other. It's not related to, well, I've got a program here that I want to map out the next 15, 20 years. It doesn't exist. It's like, well, okay, if we implement this now, we'll call it a 10-year program, or we'll call it an 8-year program, but in reality, it's a program that can we survive the next election on what we've just written down. And usually, if you look at any of these long-term programs in any government, there's enough fluff in there that you can't really nail anything down of what's actually going to happen, when it's going to happen, and who's going to deliver it, and at what point you're going to see success, because it just doesn't exist. The goal to get a change in government is how we innovate through engagement. We actually get our people in the system as being part of the solution. I never, in all my years, had results without the people in the system being part of that solution. It just didn't happen if they weren't engaged on them. Aging care is an extremely big challenge for us. But do you think we can manage that challenge? In a case where right now we have like 4,600 nursing beds. We've added about 30 a year over the last 12 years, and the cost has gone up by 300%. The long-term goal for the next 20 years is we will need 300 a year. We need to go to 10,600. Now, is there any way we will meet that challenge under the current model of build bigger, better, more bricks and mortar, and we'll manage this? We will never manage it. And first of all, we're building things that no one wants to be in. So if there any, now I've asked this question everywhere, so if everyone raises their hand, you'll be the first one. Anyone looking forward to being in a nursing home? Yeah. No, I'm pretty good at now. That's not even a guess, right? Where that's going to be. So when you look at that, you say, why are we doing that? The money we're spending on bricks and mortar, we can put better health care. We can train people to deliver that service to your home for as long as you're able to stay in your home. We can create a model where we can create clusters of ownership. You continue to own your home until you no longer need it, and then if the time comes and you go to a nursing home, you will have had many, many more years in your own home. And who doesn't want that? So the model has to change, and we can fix it. But you've got to get off cutting the ribbon philosophy. That's what happens. You know, things that have been chronic for years, and we saw them, there'll be people there that will relate to this, when we ended up having, you know, the contracting out in the province, the way we tender contracts. I could go through an example right now where we threw 20 million out the door because we wanted to cut the ribbon in time for the next election. It wasn't even our project. And people said, well, you know, it wasn't our project. We didn't design it. It's our money. It's taxpayers' money. It doesn't matter whose project it was. But no, we need to cut the ribbon before the next election. And I know there will be people here that have a story everywhere. So when you think about the story in government, and you think about an $8.5 billion business, I never went into any evaluation of an operation, and operation services is where I spent my entire career, that I didn't find 10% in savings. A 10% improvement. And so when you think of that, that's $850 million. What would we do in this province with $850 million? We could have rural roads that are fit to drive on. But firstly, we'd stop building twin massive great highways, and the only thing we're missing is traffic. We put the money in the infrastructure we need in rural communities, in infrastructure we need in roads that get tourists out into our communities. There's such an opportunity. We're shutting down schools and hospitals. And I won't sit here and argue that we don't have too many schools or hospitals. But what I've come to realize for the time I've been in government and in opposition, but found that, you know, when these rural schools, when they close, the community dies. So we are expediting that program because we're actually spending so much money elsewhere on things we don't need. We do it all the time, and yet the community is going to suffer. We won't fix up the rural roads. Tourists get off into our communities and they want to get right back on the 4-lane. Someone said the other night, boy, it is some slick. You come in at Palace, you hit the big stop right there outside of right in St. Stephen. So you gas up there, maybe there's you use the washroom, and then you beeline her to Moncton, and you can hit another one right there, and then you gas up again, and then you beeline her to the tourist center in Nova Scotia. Now that's pretty sad. And that's why we have the nickname of drive-through province. But look how we're set up. So those issues compound the problem. I met with a group of the buildings trade here not long ago, and they were saying, you know, we don't have the ability to compete in other provinces the way they compete in our province. We don't have the same luxury. They bring they bid on contracts, they come in here and they take our jobs. How long have we been talking about that? Everybody wants a fair system across the provinces because we all want to bid in each other's province. But it can't be one way. And when do we stand up for New Brunswick? The same thing with the pipeline project. You know, it amazes me when we see a project like that and Quebec taking a position that, well, we're not sure. They get $17 billion a year of federal transfer. We get 2.6. And you say, well, how are we going to finance that if we don't allow natural resources, which are paying the bills at this point in time? Maybe there are other ways in the future, but right now, that's what's doing it. How are we going to actually pay those bills? Well, if Quebec's $17 billion started to drop because the revenues aren't there, the oil wasn't being shipped out, maybe their attitude would change. But we won't talk about that. We won't have those sort of frank discussions because that's what changes how we think and what we can do differently. I believe there's an opportunity to change because I've seen it firsthand. I believe it because I know we can be better. I've seen how our government can start right from day one. I don't need training wheels. I see an opportunity for us to take off right from the start and start engaging individuals in the system, driving accountability in the system, and create a platform across party lines that says this time is for New Brunswick. And whether it's a PC party or whether it is any party, it doesn't matter what the name is. This time, this party can be a conduit for change in this province. This time, there are 7 candidates running. Many people say, well, we don't know if we'll see what comes out the other end, hope you do well. Yeah, I'm glad, I appreciate that. But you know I won't do well unless people that maybe never were involved before play part of this role and say, this time, I could choose the next premier, starting at a list of 7 candidates, then finalizing it down to 2 candidates, and then down to 1 candidate. And you could have much more of a choice than you've ever had before. And there are people who will say, well, I don't get involved in politics. You know what is inspirational for me? Is there are people I'm meeting every day that are getting involved in politics for the first time. And that is what drives me. That's what keeps me going. And the people that are working on my team, and Bill introduced me tonight, Francine, I doubt that you were very politically active in the past. It's not about politics. And that is so inspirational. The people on my team, 80-90% of them, never been involved in politics. That's what'll change the program. You know, I often, when I get talking, I said sometimes that it feels like a lotto machine when the balls roll up, because something new comes in my head and I just come, oh, there's something I should talk about. But it's related to the free education. You know, it just throws out, it's like it wasn't part of the budget, wasn't anything to do with the plan, but we had students in there complaining about high tuition. And then they said, well, we're going to have free education. So what did we do? We impacted 40,000 kids and families on reducing the tax credit, taking away the actual rebate to keep kids here in this province. Every student should have a right to education and have money, and they did. 7,000 that this program would have qualified for, 3,500 already got a full federal tax refund on the tuition. And the others already had access to money to go to school. The universities say, well, this is great, this will encourage more students. Why don't we see more students going to universities right now? The actual secondary schools, or the business colleges or private colleges and universities, they said their enrollment had been increasing by about 15% a year. And when I asked them, why is that? They said, because we spend a lot of time making sure our curriculum matches the requirements in the market. Imagine that. But what we do in government is we subsidize poor behavior. And we do it, and I could sit here and talk about that, or stand here and talk about that all night long. Because there's one example or another, that if you're not doing your part, we'll subsidize you so you can do less of a part. That's not kind of the way I see it. So people talk about, you know, you're in finance, you're all about the numbers. I understand the numbers. But for me, the numbers are a way to achieve the real results. How long have we been talking about patients, 50,000 patients in the residents in the province that don't have family doctors? How long have we been talking about that? Education, 8th, 9th in the country. How long have we been talking about that? You know, the rural roads as I talked about, and how long have we been talking about that? The aging care model, we keep building big institutions. You know, this can be fixed by people that have common sense to fix it. I'm not running for any other reason to fix it. I'm not, you know, people say, well, you know, you're not necessarily the right demographic, you know, the 30-something, 40-something. I know what I know because of the time I've spent and the experience I have, inside and outside of government, mostly outside. But inside, knowing how the opportunities are there. I know the great people that are there that want to be part of it. They just need a leader that will be honest, have common sense, and will support them to make the right decisions. They need someone to stand up for them, help them do the best they can. And we will deliver results here that you will be amazed at. And it doesn't require more taxes. We wouldn't have raised the HST, we didn't need it. And we'd have been within 100 million right now of the deficit. So that really bothers me, because with the money we can save in the system, we can have these other things that I talk about. They're real for me. I can write it down exactly what we need. We have a plan. And it's a case of getting the plan back on the tracks and getting people involved, and that we actually make it last beyond any one government, because that's the key. So I'll ask each of you to get involved. You're involved by being here tonight. And many of you have been involved throughout this process, and I thank you for that. We can fix it. I'm not running for finance, I'm running for the Premier's office, because that's where the job will get done, and that's where I can get the job done. I ask each of you to give me a day on October 22nd. Bring 10 of your closest friends. And I'll give you a Premier and a province that you'll be proud of, and you'll be glad to tell your kids to come home, because there's a future here in Brunswick. Thank you very much. One grade, every year we were there, and this guy had a team. He taught university part-time, but he worked in government full-time, very well-educated individual. He left the province. He was fired within 5 months. He left the province and he put it on his Facebook page. Here's a picture looking through the rearview mirror of his van, back at a sign in New Brunswick, saying, leaving my beloved province, my wife, my 3 kids, and my 2 parents, never to return. How many of those can this province stand? And yet, politics trumps it all. Well, if I'm not successful at this, I will stand proud. I'll meet any one of you in the street and say I stood on what I believed in. And unfortunately, my time was either too early, too late, or the province isn't ready. We will get ready one day. Yes, Fritz.
Blaine, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
In 1995, I made a critical decision to stay here for all the beauty about, because I'm originally from away. And I'll just say away. Yeah. So anyway, I decided to stay here. I said, I love it. I love everything about here. Okay. And then at the time, Frank McKenna was the leader of the day, and we had like 26,000 civil servants. So now, umpteen years later, here I am, and we've got like 40,000 civil servants.
51.
Okay, worse. And what have we got to show for it? And all my children, I have 7 kids, all left the province since 1995. I've got 1 child, 1 grandchild, 1 daughter-in-law, 1 son-in-law that live here. Okay? They said, Mom, we're not coming back. Get a grip. So, what's happening with our civil servants? Why are we expanding?
Because there's no organization in the system to prevent otherwise. Many people will say, you know, well, just you should cut by 10,000 or 5,000 or whatever number. And when you see that happen back in the 90s, as soon as the revenue came back, it all exploded again because there was nothing underneath there. There was no activity to create a different organization or manage it. We started reducing the number of civil service by about 500 a year. And we were doing it on a nutrition formula. About 1,500 were retiring, and we were just not bringing back 500. So we would bring back 1,000. But we were reorganizing, and we were taking away the holes. So it wasn't like this person didn't come back, so we got a gap and there's a vacancy. No, that's all gone. We reorganized, we reshuffled. We had people even would come to us. And one individual said, I'd like to have the job of that person that retired. And we said, you don't like their job? And they said, no, I'll do that one and mine too. Well, when people say that, you know they're starting to be part of the culture shift. And so what I've found is that good people were just looking for leadership to be honest and true and not spend their savings. Because I also saw cases where deputies would be driving change. And I knew one case where there would be $30 million improvement. And then all of a sudden the attitude changed to this individual, and I met with him. I said, what's happening here? I said, you've got a different attitude than I saw a few weeks back. And the projection I saw from the year end was $30 million higher now. And he said, well, we found different things that we needed to spend more money on. I said, no, tell me what happened. And he said, well, often, he said, we find the political expenditure requirements increase with the budget availability. So, coupled with reducing the numbers, you reorganize. You do it in a methodical way where people are retiring so you don't create chaos in the system. Because when you lay off anyone or any group, all of a sudden people say there's a big gap, and that gets magnified. And there's riots in the street. But when you reorganize as people retire, because everybody realizes per capita we're high. I don't know what the magic number is, and I never went for a magic number. I just went every day we get a little better. And every day we find a way to do something in a different way, but deliver better service or equal service with the people we have. And we found 2,600 vacancies in the system. These were just placeholders. And we didn't change them all. About 1,500 were actually budgeted placeholders. And all they were there for is that if someone come in and said, could you hire my cousin? Really, they're looking for work. Oh yeah, Minister, I have a place right here, and it doesn't even change the budget a bit. So we started, the vacancies started taking them up. And they would say, well, what happens if I have a request to hire someone? You'll put in an application for this position, you'll justify the position, it'll go through the board, and we'll approve it or disapprove it based on the validity of the project. There's a way to manage down, and we were doing it. 2,100 we reduced, and we were on a steady path. Where the number would ultimately end up, I wasn't sure, but I would guess significantly lower. 45, I don't know what the number would be, but it would be down by 4,000 or 5,000.
Gentleman back of it. Yes, sir. Coming in late, I may have missed this, but I wondered how you felt about highway tolls.
We looked at the highway tolls in the province, and here's what bothers me kind of when looking at the history. When the original highway was built through the province, it was built on an economic model and an actual economic forecast. It said, we'll get this much from tolls, and this will offset what it's going to cost to have put that highway in place, and we need better economic driver through the province. Well, regardless of whether we believe in that or not, it was a project that had some validity based on how it's going to be paid for. Canceling the tolls was a typical kind of political process where elect me and I'll put in a highway in, elect me and I won't cause you to pay for it. And so then you're left with about a $300 million hit and about a $30 to $40 million every year. Now, in addition to that, what did it do with the philosophy about other tolls or other highways, twin highways? Well, I'd like to have a twin highway to St. Stephen, Route 1. Doesn't cost anything. It's $500 million project, but I'll never pay for it. So I'll build one of those. I'd like to build one to Route 11. Doesn't going to cost anything. I mean, it's a project, we'll do a lot of work while we're here, and then it won't affect me any. So people see things and don't see the consequences. We looked at 8 spots in the province for tolls, and that's what it takes to make it worthwhile. And you got to capture all the traffic moving around internally. People say, well, put it at the borders, catch the trucks and all that. It's hardly worth your while to do that. I mean, I won't say it is, it maybe 10 million a year. But if you capture the whole thing, it would make the tile tolls reasonable. But still, I'm talking like to go here to Moncton or here to St. Stephen, it'd be $4 or $5. 30 million, 28 million. So the key is us, really, and you look at that highway, and I think every time I drive down that highway to St. Stephen, I'm thinking, look what I'm missing driving along the way. And I think, wow, tourists don't even see it. And they won't, it's hard to make a point to drive off and try to connect, and I've done it, and it's difficult. So I think that we need to stop building infrastructure we don't need. We can focus on infrastructure we have and really put our effort and our money in that area. And for as far as the highways, I was up in Miramichi, and I said, I don't agree with this twin highway to Miramichi. And people came around and said, you're in Miramichi, And I said, yeah. And they said, well, do you agree with passing lanes? I said, absolutely. They said, so do I. So do we. People have common sense. But the politicians, we're still learning that.
The experience in Nova Scotia was deemed to be pretty successful, though. Why wouldn't it be equally successful for a province that's essentially described as drive-through?
Well, successful in the terms of, maybe they have more traffic in and around the province. We can make money with it, but we're not going to pay for the highways because we don't have the traffic. I mean, in terms of what you say successful, we can charge $4 or $5 and we'll generate $25 to $30 million. And when I went around the province in finance, the top 2 items before we raised the income tax was HST and tolls. We got that was the top 2 around the province. And of course, we committed not to raise HST, and the tolls was kind of another issue, right? So you can imagine. So if people said, let's do that, I would prefer to build what we need and say, let's just stop building things we don't need, because I've seen the waste in the system. I've seen how good we can be, and that's where I focus my effort, to put money in things we do need. And that includes an array of things that I talk about with education and healthcare particularly. We don't need to be 8th. And we don't need to be in a position 50 years after the original Official Languages Act to have 80% of our kids or 70% of our kids graduating that are not totally bilingual in both languages. I mean, how did we get here after this point in time? I don't believe for a moment it's related to the educators. We need to stand back on a non-political basis and say, what should an educated student look like? And then get out of the classroom and say to the educators, you design a curriculum that sees this outcome. And all we do as politicians is say, I want some way to be sure that we're achieving success. We're benchmarking with other provinces, other countries. We've got best in class procedures and educational practices.
Anybody else? Yes, sir. Here.
Blaine, how much cost savings would be involved if we get rid of what I'll call the middlemen or the associations and delivering services to the public in the province of New Brunswick? Vital, Horizon, Bundy Trail Authority, Miller Construction, Highway. I mean, there's just so, I grew up in the business world. Every time you put a middleman in, it costs you money.
Yeah. Well, a lot of some of the groups you talk about, and I think the one in relation to the Funny Trail there isn't a lot of cost involved with that oversight because a lot of them are volunteers that are in working on that board. But when you mentioned Talte and Horizon, the original project that was done back in 2006, 7, 8, somewhere in that range, was to combine from 8 authorities down to 1. And the decision made at the time was, oh no, we can't go to 1, we'll stop at 2, for obvious reasons. But the money is not in the health authorities. Like someone's asked me, and they did it on political panel, could we run with 2 bilingual health authorities? Absolutely. No reason why we couldn't. Education, they do it, they negotiate together with the MBK and MBTF. It's not an issue. All their meetings are translated, they work quite well. But the point is not in the board itself. The point is that underneath all that, when you were doing that consolidation, nothing else happened. When I asked the company that did that study, what was achieved out of the $40 million benefit that was identified? And they said less than 10%. So it became just an exercise in headlines to say we've gone from 8 to 2, and therefore we automatically save money. And that wasn't the case. So the real merit is in not duplicating efforts, not having, let's say, in particular, I guess you could take the Moncton area where you have the Dumont and the Moncton General and saying, how do we complement the services in these 2 hospitals? Not because you've got this service, I need to have it, because all hospitals have to provide the service in both languages. And there's no issue with having a hospital operate in French, like the George Dumont, that's fine. But let's not duplicate a service because it's a Francophone hospital, and vice versa. That's where the money is lost, is if we think that you got it, I need it.
Any more questions? Second time? Herb, did you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. Just want to take a better picture. Yes, sir.
I've long been a supporter of fracking. I've seen other jurisdictions where it's been very successful. So my question is there a reasonable expectation if fracking was allowed in the province that these companies that you spoke about would come back?
Well, it's in being involved for years with negotiating with companies around the world, you find how much is left on the table when government negotiates with anybody. And any companies here that would have been working with government, you'd see how bad, how poorly jobs are executed, designs, missed opportunities in terms of best design. In the case of natural gas, we have something here that doesn't exist anywhere else in Canada, and that's an LNG plant. That LNG plant has no future as an import LNG plant, but it has a big future as an LNG export. Now to convert that, it's about a $3 billion conversion process. And Repsol have got a sunk asset there, stranded asset. So if you married up, let's say Southwest or Corridor, and said, if we were to explore our domestic supply here, and it's real, could that be a ready-made supply of natural gas to a conversion project at $2 or $3 billion and then export LNG to around the world? That's a niche we have as an opportunity that doesn't exist anywhere else in the country. The pipeline has a similar project. The people say, well, a transshipment line, what's that? We're bringing crude, we're sending what's that do once the pipeline projects are done? Having Western money here with the crude oil in this province could bring a coker or an upgrader into this region. That's a $6 or $7 billion project. And that's what brings an offshoot from that. And in case no one else asks another question, I want to make another observation, or not challenge, question. The Port of St. John, how great is it to go across the Harbor Bridge and see containers lined up on the west side? I sat in the Lion Building, my last few years of Irving were in the Lion Building, and I looked over the main harbor, and if I saw a big ship or a ship drive going to the main harbor, I always thought, well, we should have a holiday, because this is a rare occurrence. They were shipping, let's say 6 years ago, they were shipping maybe 10, 15,000 containers a year. They're currently shipping about 100,000 a year. And how that all happened was the port saw an opportunity to bring in a major shipping line, and that's MSC, Mitsui Shipping Line, one of the largest in the world. Goes everywhere in the world. And they met with us, I met with them. And we looked at subsidizing MSC for about 6 months, because they wouldn't come. They said, we're going to lose our shirt here. We're not coming here. We looked at the business case of what the potential could be once they got established. We said, you know, that's real. So we subsidized them for 6 months, maybe a year, but they're completely off life support now. They come in here, and we worked with the shippers in the province, who were shipping, some of which the government had some hooks into. They were shipping to Montreal, to Quebec. CN was charging $200 more a rail car to come here than Halifax. And why is that? So we went through all those scenarios to say, we want these people in our province to use our facilities. So we went to 100,000 units, and just about 2-3 months ago, they signed DP World, who are an international, world-renowned ship management, port management company. They have ports out west, they have ports all around the world based in Dubai. They're investing heavily in the west side of this terminal. And they said the capability or potential is for us to go to 400,000, 4 times what it is today. And something I learned in that presentation was that 90% of the traffic, this is what I was told, I can't verify this other than what I was told by the folks in the port, 90% of the traffic going to Halifax could save 500 miles by coming to St. John.
Wow.
Now that's significant. So that little subsidy for 6 months has spawned a major shipping opportunity in this port, and if that port's alive, this province is alive, because now every shipper in this province, every industry in this province has a connection anywhere in the world. Now that's a good news story. And every time I drive over the Harbour Bridge, I think that's what government's about. Investing where it makes sense and seeing the return on investment.
Yes, sir.
Wait, what do you think of MAC the greater level? What do you think of NB Power?
NB Power had a $4 billion debt. And if you went over the history of NB Power and said, well, how did they get there? You want to answer the question? That's how they got there. So the goal was, how do you get them into a business framework so they start to get back into a proper debt equity ratio, which now they're on track for an 80-20 split, which would be kind of normal. They're paying down the debt, not in huge fashion, but they're just working away at that. They have a board of directors that was selected by the board of directors. So we didn't appoint people. They came to us and said, we have 4 people. They went around, they did a skill search, and they came back and said, here's 4 individuals with different disciplines that we want on our board. And we said, fine. Because we expect them to run like a business. So when they're in a position to refurbish Mactaquac, which I hope is the outcome, they will be able to finance it on their own merit. Now they have a long ways to go in terms of improving the operation, and I think there's lots of areas that you probably have experience with, or others may, that NB Power could get more efficient. But if you look at where they were and where they are now, let's say 5-6 years later, they're on a path of a regular contribution to government, maybe 70, 80, 100 million a year, and paying down their debt on a controlled basis.